you guys make a bet, and the loser has to lick a Nintendo Switch cart.
That sounds terrible.
Right.
It does sound terrible.
I'm in. I'll take some of that action.
All right, I'm in. I got it.
All right.
I'm down.
Welcome back to the NerdNest, everybody. I'm Bill. We have a lot of video game news to talk about. It's the week after Summer Games Fest, and even though Rich and I did an episode live on Wednesday, which a lot of you complained about the audio quality, it was live. Nothing I can do about that. We still wanted to get together and talk about the video game news that we didn't get a chance to cover during that episode. And luckily, we also have Russ and Carrie here as well. So, Rich, what have you been up to this week, man? How's it going?
Everything is good. I've been playing some video games, playing some Hollow Knight. It's Next Fest, right? Like this is the week of Next Fest, so that's been a lot of fun. And just enjoying all the news. We've got, the Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X, and enjoying my Switch 2. And then we have like weird Steam Deck stuff going on. So it's been interesting. Yeah, good week, I would say.
It has been an interesting week. Russ, you just mentioned when you and Carrie were in Los Angeles that you went to In-N-Out Burger, which is awesome. When I lived in LA, I would go there all the time. But next time you go there, you got to go to the Hat instead.
Okay.
The fries are so greasy that you can see through the brown paper bag that they're served in. It's really good.
That's the test. That's the Simpsons test. The Homer test, right?
Super good.
Just put it on the wall. Does it make it translucent?
Exactly. So how was your week, Russ?
Good. Just kind of catching up from the trip over the weekend, and then just making videos and stuff. It's been a good week. Not as much gameplay as I was hoping. Mostly testing and stuff, but still having a good time. Rich, you brought up playing a lot of Hollow Knight. Like in my Xbox Handheld video, I was like, oh yeah, and in the game I got to demo, and I didn't mention what it was, and it's just because it wasn't special. It was the new Gears of War, right? But so many people were like, oh, he played Silk Song. Like, no, I did not.
That would be awesome.
Anyway, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Carrie, do you think Silk Song is ever going to come out?
It's supposed to come out when the Ally and LAX do, so
this winter, right?
Well, we actually know what the date is, I don't know. Yes.
Do we?
This holiday.
Yeah.
We do know.
Podcast exclusive.
We do know, and it is this holiday. Thank you for
It's the holiday.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, anyway, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast player, thank you so much for choosing to hang out with us. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I wanted to start us off talking about the Xbox Ally X, which is Microsoft's answer to the handhelds becoming more popular and people getting more excited about it. I won't say that it's necessarily their answer to the Steam Deck, but it is. But it's also kind of their answer to the Switch and, things like the PS Portal and that kind of thing. It's also just this really strange strategy that they've decided to go with. And I was looking through some of the calls that people had sent in, and this one was actually sent in before the news came out. This is from Faraz. So give a listen to what Faraz has to say, and we'll talk about the Xbox Ally X after that.
I know we're all fans of the Steam Deck, and one of my favorite features of SteamOS is to be able to switch from game mode to desktop mode. My question is, how easy would it be for Microsoft to implement something like this on Windows? I feel like this would be great not only for Windows gaming handhelds, but also for anyone using their Windows PC, desktop, or laptop on their TV.
All right, so you guys actually got to have hands-on with the Xbox Ally and the Xbox. Did you get to mess with both of them or just one?
Both. Yep.
Yeah.
Both? Okay, so you guys got to use both the Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X. When you were using it, did it feel, I know that you guys didn't get to go into quote-unquote desktop mode, but did it really feel like the operating system was actually native controller as a first, like is the first way that you would use this? Russ?
Yeah, I think, well, we didn't get to really break it, like we just had like, hey, go now and start up a game. And so it was just, it was kind of curated, it was, so yeah, it wasn't like a full on like, hey, go ahead and see what you can do, that would have been awesome. But there were some things I think that were really controller focused. I mean, like even putting in your password when it comes up, which is kind of weird that you got to put in your PIN like a Windows computer when you start it up, but it's there. And instead of just, you can use the controller to navigate to the numbers, or each number is assigned with a button. So to be like left trigger is 1, right trigger is 2, right? And so then you would just memorize your 4-button combination and be like, that's my combo. You know what I mean? And so you could just bam, hit that to get in. So it's kind of cool. I would just disable the PIN if I could, But then another one is like the task manager. I don't know what it's called, like game list view, where it's like you want to see specific, like alt tabbing, basically, right? Where you want to see multiple windows. You just press and hold one of the buttons. I think it's the Xbox button, and it brings it up, and then you can navigate left and right between them. That was like the biggest like good thing for me, because I kind of don't like the way SteamOS does it, where you kind of have to like push the Steam button and it opens it up and you have to pick the one, like this is just kind of, it shows them all in a kind of gallery view. And so I liked that. So I think they are definitely working on it, but super early, like in terms of just like the polish and stuff. But yeah, I can see it totally working.
Carrie?
So I did break it. And so I was in like a little mini theater at the Activision headquarters, and so I was just moving, like using it, right? And I was like, oh, let me bring up the frame limiter, the frame window to see stuff. And the guy remarked that I was the only one to have done that all day. And I was like, it's kind of my bread and butter. But it was only, so all TDP controls were not working on our units. And I had pressed the button, and while I was in Gears Reloaded, and it pushed me back into the Xbox app like type of thing. And I'm like looking around, and you know how like in Steam, the SteamOS, you can just like, it'll show you like an extra menu because the game is running. You can click resume game and it'll push you back. It didn't have that. So I'm like looking around, and everyone was clearly looking at me like trying to find my way out, and they just swapped me out with another unit. Like they didn't even bother say hold down the Xbox button to alt tab back to your thing. They're just like, here you go. And I was like, oh, I guess that's not ready. But if they just
that's
told
the
me
equivalent of like a bunch of guys with full camo get-ups running in and like knocking him down to the ground and taking his toys
like,
away.
I was like this, right? And literally it's just like swoosh, and like my hands are still like this, like cartoon like, and then they just put another one right in my hands.
Well, Carrie, you probably didn't hear, but that's how the actual alt tab is going to work on release. It's just, someone's going to swap in a new machine, take the other one out, and you're good to go. Yeah.
I actually
the
did
downside
the same
to that is you have to buy like 20 of them so you can switch between games quickly.
Right.
I actually did the same thing myself, because I mentioned in my video, but they changed the start and select placement. Instead of being the top 2 buttons, they're the bottom 2 buttons. So now up above are like function buttons. And on the top right, it's like your library button. So it's like you're in the middle of a game. You're like, I need to know what games I own. You press the library button. It's the dumbest position ever. And so I did that. Like the first, like, okay, go ahead and press start to start your game, right? And so I pressed the library button, not even thinking about it. It throws me in the library. And I'm like, oh, how do I get back? I didn't know about the alt tab thing yet. And yeah, sure enough, another Xbox appeared in my hands. It's like it just whopped. They didn't even tell me. And then later on in the show, they showed how to get to that menu thing. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how I would have done it.
That's the thing. Like, why just hold down the Xbox button? Like, just hold on. That's like literally all they had to say.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like it's probably still cooking, and they weren't ready for people to, as you guys said, break it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a very, like, alt tabbing is obviously, I don't think, a graceful way to get back in with communicating to the person that, like, obviously there's a game running in the background. The system Xbox experience should be aware of that, like how SteamOS already is. Like, there's a lot of things that they are for sure copying of the SteamOS thing. There's a lot to talk about. There was I forget the woman's name, but she's one of the lead engineers for Windows side, and she was talking about how they were doing, and I was like literally the only person that cheered. She was like, oh, we have a gamepad with a pin code thing, just like how it is on an Xbox console. And she's like, we also support UAC, and I was like, woo! And like the only one in this like theater, and she's like, thank you all, both of you. Yeah, so I'm super stoked about that because that's literally like, the whole box of scraps joke that we've been talking about for a while. That
Right.
To answer Faraj's question, yeah, ostensibly this Xbox experience, which I believe is just coming to the Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X, is coming to that first, but ostensibly it's just going to be a feature of Windows that you can just jump into. So you can just enable the Xbox experience as a thing you start up into, and that'll be your interface so you could have a PC gaming console that's hooked up to your living room that will facilitate all the things that you want. So you just have full controller support and not needing anything else.
That's amazing.
Yeah, which also
from everything
led
that
me-
we heard, they kept talking about handhelds. Did they say something to you guys about this is just going to be a feature on Windows, or is it going to be restricted to specific hardware?
At the moment, yeah, go ahead, Russ. You go.
No, I was going to say I didn't ask, but I think Carrie did. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. So so there's a few things that we learned from asking questions, and they were really tight about a lot of things and telling us just to send an email. So they were cagey with a lot of things. The answer that we got was that for the immediate moment, only the Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X will have this Xbox experience initially when it launches, and then it will come to other handhelds later. And that's specifically what they're saying. But for me, there is nothing there that really prevents any other Windows. Like I think that within like a few days, people are going to be like, oh, we're going to go into the registry. You just put this in there and then you have it. I fully anticipate that to be happening.
So one thing to add to that is that this is kind of like a disincentive to even buy the thing in the first place. Because if you've got an old Ally or an old Ally X, at that point, you're just paying for better ergonomics and a better chip, But like that's a big proposal, especially if it's going to be like $1,000 handheld. Like I'll just keep my Ally, for free and then put this thing on it. And it's kind of a very unique situation where they're in, where they're like, yes, please buy our new thing. But then also we just made your old stuff a lot better. And so maybe you don't need it. And so that'll be kind of interesting how that all plays out, because I think that at that point, the original ROG Ally, the white one with the smaller battery, like that becomes the best bang for buck handheld if that gets that Windows experience. And you can still find those open box ones for like $400, $450 or whatever they're selling for nowadays. That is such a good deal at that point.
Yeah, someone mentioned replied to me on Twitter saying they got an Ally X for $300 or so. I was like,
that's crazy.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I know. Goodness gracious. Right.
Wow.
Wow. That is outrageous. So I was happy for them. But that's, yeah. I mean, even when, I don't know if you guys were having conversations with Asus about this, like, especially when the Project Canon was like coming around. I remember they were like, why are we competing with ourselves? Yeah. So there's lots of things that I have feelings about it, but I'll wait until I actually get the unit in hand when, it should be properly tested. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because right now I think the biggest conversations that I've seen online is people saying it's not an Xbox, it's a PC. And what is the price for this thing? And people are like, oh, it's going to be $500 and $800, which I think is the correct price.
People ecstasis, right?
No. I mean, like, just general sentiment of like how people, like, when you say, okay, what is the Xbox Ally's chip? It's like, well, it's basically like the Steam Deck. And it's like, well, I don't want to pay $600 for that. Like, $500 is like where their head is. And then everyone thinks, oh, the more expensive one's going to be $800. And it's like, I don't know how, like, we've seen HX370 handhelds being like as cheap as $1,100.
Yeah.
The chip is expensive from AMD. Mm-hmm. So to get down to $800 is like really difficult. I know that Asus is only having 24 gigs of RAM and they're reusing a lot of the stuff. Like, it's essentially an Ally X in all sense of the word, with just more ergonomics and that different chip. So they're not really doing that much in terms of like R&D of what they're doing, but getting down to 800 seems difficult to me. So who knows?
I think that because this is an Xbox, I know that people are saying no, it's a PC. Well, Microsoft is the ones who get to decide what Xbox is, and seems like going forward, Xbox is just Xbox PC. But because it has that name Xbox in it, I feel like the expectation is it's going to be cheaper, because consoles are generally much cheaper point of entry than PCs are. PCs are usually more expensive. So let's talk about the price. And I want to start with the white one. What do you guys think the entry price will be for the white Xbox Ally that has the Z2A chipset, 16 gigs of RAM, half a terabyte of storage, slower RAM, and the same screen that's in the... they both have the same screen, so I guess that's not important. And no adaptive triggers or whatever. Russ, what do you think for the price?
So it also 60 watt hour battery, and then what is the other thing? Oh, no USB 4. So those are the other two things it doesn't have. I think it's going to be $600. I think that's just I don't know. Like I can see them being like, oh, well, the Steam Deck is within this range of, we all say 400, but it's really up to like 650, right? I could see them being like $600 for the 512 gigs and, the RAM and all that kind of stuff. I can see that being the price point. And then expected discounts that we'll find on Best Buy and stuff like that. So you can probably grab it for $550, grab it for $500 on certain sales or open a box and whatnot. So I think $600 is the price.
Rich?
I like that price. What I said on Wednesday was I think the lowest possible price it can plausibly be is $499. Like I think that's I can't imagine Microsoft and Asus, even if Microsoft is subsidizing, I can't imagine them getting it lower than $499. But I think 600 is a lot more realistic. And to Russ's point, even when we talk about the Steam Deck as $400, that $400 model at this point is not even one that I think most people would like recommend anymore in the same way that we would recommend a $400 64 gigabyte compared to the $550 256 gigabyte. At this point, when the comparison is a $400 LCD versus $550 OLED, I'm definitely going to be recommending the $550 OLED to more people than I would have before. Before it was just an upgrade to an SSD, right? But now it's the entire screen, it's the battery life, it's so many more improvements where realistically now you're probably going to be spending $550 for a Steam Deck more so than $400. So yeah, I think that is the price that the Xbox Ally X, or excuse me, the white model, the Xbox Ally has to compete with. Yeah.
And then Carrie, you said 500. Do you think it's going to hit 500?
No, I want it to hit 500. I think that's the correct price for it.
Well, I want it to hit 100. So let's
I mean,
what do we think is going to happen?
I think it's going to be 600. I feel that like in my bones as well. I would have been far more better with 600 if the Z2A lined up with the original leaks. Because the leaks said that it was going to be 8533 megatransfers on RAM, which would have meant a backported memory controller has been put onto this chip, onto the Z2A. And it's not. It's 6400 megatransfers. So it's decidedly a Steam Deck. So we don't get any real benefit from getting that faster RAM, because if we have that faster RAM, then we have 20% better performance that we can achieve. And then you're like, well, $600 and we get 20% better than Steam Deck. That makes sense. That's like, I'm only paying 10% more. So I get 20% more performance. That makes sense to me. So I think that's where I am. 500 is what it should be. 600 is likely what we're going to get. Or maybe 550. But I probably say that 600 is the realistic price.
So let's say that before we get to the Ally X, let's say that the Xbox Ally X, the black one. Let's say that it's 550. That's the same price as the Steam Deck OLED lowest tier version, right?
The 256 gig one, right?
Is it 512 now?
Are they all 512 now?
Let's look.
Well, whatever it is.
The bottom tier now is 256, right?
That's right. Bottom tier
is the cheapest OLED.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
512. No, I'm sorry. 256 is LCD and 400.
Yeah. Right.
512 OLED is 550.
Okay, so let's say the 550, 512 OLED, okay, versus the Xbox Ally, you are looking at, you can now play Game Pass, and you don't have any anti-cheat issues, and DRM issues kind of go away because they're made with Windows in mind. Not saying that I think that Windows is better than SteamOS or one way or the other. All I'm wondering is which one do you find more appealing on an apples to apples thing?
Before anyone answers that, can I add something to what you're saying, Bill? Just to give a +1 to what you're saying. The Xbox Ally, if it's anything like the ROG Ally, which you assume it will work with SteamOS and or Bazzite much better than the Steam Deck does with Windows. At least that has been my experience, right?
Point.
So like,
that would be true.
I'm going to put a bullet point there that like, if you get the Xbox Ally, you can probably do either Linux or Windows or both. And on Steam Deck, on Steam Deck, you're pretty much limited to SteamOS.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And now I want to make a prediction before Russ answers. He wants the Xbox Ally because it's white.
That is a big factor. That's funny. No, so it's also 60 watt hours with the Ally, right? So it's going to have a bigger battery and 120 frames and VRR. Right? Yeah. It's not OLED, but you have all that stuff. It's also 16:9. That'll be great for certain people who want to make sure that they're always getting full screen every time they're playing a game, as opposed to some games which have black bars on 16:10. I think that, the Ally is probably the better bet right there because of the additional compatibility, being able to play Destiny, being able to play Fortnite, all that kind of stuff more easily, I think just makes a lot more sense for people who don't need trackpads or that Steam experience.
I think most people don't need trackpads, but the people who need trackpads really friggin' need trackpads. And so that, like, they don't really get a choice because we don't, I mean, outside of Lenovo, nobody else is taking trackpads seriously. Lenovo and Valve. Yeah. Carrie, which one would you get?
I think it's just a matter of preference, really. It probably, as you have already noted, it probably will be a trackpad or no trackpad thing because there's a lot of trades that you have there. The OLED panel I really love on the Steam Deck OLED. It's a lot punchier, and with HDR you get really good visuals. And the LCD that is on the Ally, it's not bad, but it's not fantastic. What it does really well is it's super low power for a panel at 120 hertz with VRR, and that VRR is sensational. And I'm not saying I know this to be a fact, but I'm trying to finish up my original Lenovo Legion Go video with the Z2 Go in it. That I just installed the latest Radeon drivers without having to hack them. So it looks like ostensibly that AMD is no longer doing the nonsense that they were doing before with the Z1 series, and you can just install mainline Radeon drivers on the Z2 series of chips. And if that is the case, then that means that on the Windows side, we don't have to be beholden to Asus or whoever to get us updated drivers, which does mean that, the Ally at $600 offers far more versatility, and the Steam Deck is just a very good product. It is like a solid thing, and if you're in the Steam ecosystem and want trackpads, I think it really just boils down to what your preference is, and trackpad might be one of the top things that make or break people. Otherwise, I think you're going to have like a hard time really choosing. I think that not to disparage mainstream people, but like they're going to see an 800p display and they're going to see a 1080p display and bigger number better. So they're just going to go with that. But yeah, so that's basically where I would say I'm not sure one way or the other.
That's true. I was just thinking as you're saying that, even though Microsoft, it seems like they're going to position this, and they have already positioned the white model as a 720p.
Yeah, it's not.
System.
First off, this Aerith is not a 1080p system.
Not at all.
At all. No matter which way you slice this. Now you can push frequency on it to potentially get that. At least on the Steam Deck, you can go into the BIOS and start pushing frequency and pushing TDP at you're going to ruin your battery life. But you can sort of make up for it, although you'll have massive diminishing returns real fast. You just don't have a wide enough GPU to really take advantage of higher resolutions. And the 16 CU port on the Ally X is really more of a 1080p port. The saving grace is that Asus's Armory Crate has all those quick access things to do 720p and 900p. So it's not like it's all that difficult, especially now that it's in the game bar. You can just be like, boop, boop, and then you're done. So it's not that big of a deal. But again, even though people are going to be running these games at lower resolutions, they're going to have a 1080p screen. So, I don't think
Rich, of all of us, you're the Steam Deck guy. Which one are you picking?
So if the Xbox Ally is, you're saying if it's $550?
If it's $550, apples to apples comparison, they cost the same.
I
Which
think
one
the
would you
Xbox
get?
Ally is the clear winner to me. Like the chip is the same, if not better. Again, it's really just trackpads, right? Like that's the only thing that you don't get from a Steam Deck.
OLED.
Or excuse me, that you don't get from the OLED versus VRR. But I think we've seen that those screens are fairly comparable, right? Like there are ways in which one is better and there are ways in which the other is better, but they're relatively comparable screens. So I think it really is trackpads because again, the OS support is going to be better. Like we were saying earlier, battery capacity is larger. And if this truly is the successor to the Aerith, then theoretically battery life would be at least marginally better too, even if it were apples to apples capacity. So it just seems like, the at the same price, the Ally would be a clear winner to me.
Well, and you mentioned battery life. I mean, if Windows is getting streamlined, then battery life should be improved on that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I don't think so.
Although you mentioned the panels, it was very hilarious to me because I had a reaction when Kerry was talking about the screen of the ROG Ally X, and he was like, "It's a good panel, but it's not amazing or whatever or anything." And all I could think of was like, "Man, when that thing came out, I think all of us were blown away by the quality of that panel."
VRR was sensational. Like the VRR was. When the Ally when the Ally announced on April Fool's Day, on April 1st.
Yeah, that's the stupidest idea ever.
They didn't talk about VRR at all. They just said it's a 120 hertz panel and nothing else. And that's why I made a video. I was like, thanks, Asus. I hate it. And I was like, if this is going to be a 120 hertz native portrait display, what are you guys doing? And then it was like, no, it's native landscape and VRR. And I'm like, guys, what in the world? This is huge.
Why wouldn't you
and
say that?
Yeah, you should have led with this. Like, and then I made another video. I was like, thanks, Asus. I love it. It's just like, so the VRR on it is sensational. But I think if you were to compare image quality, like what you get, especially with the HDR on the Steam Deck, if you like look at Last of Us with this like really inky black scenes and like, you have like those God pillars, the light bloom that are coming in. And if you just look at both of them, the OLED is far more visually striking than the LCD panel, which can be, I don't know, it's just murky, right? The blacks are not black. The colors are not as vibrant as they are on the HDR panel of the Steam Deck OLED. So if I were to have my druthers, obviously I would rather have an OLED VRR panel of that. Sure. It's not bad, but when we compare it to the Steam Deck OLED, in terms of image quality, I think the OLED wins hands down.
Which is like the next topic that I wanted to talk about is, a lot of people are mad at Nintendo for not going with an OLED panel. They went with VRR instead. Asus came right out and said, we would not want to give up VRR in order to get OLED. It seems like getting OLED and getting OLED and VRR in the same panel is too cost prohibitive for a device that is going to be sold in this market. So which one do you guys prefer? And before anybody answers, I wanted to, in the pre-show when we were just chatting, both Carrie and Russ had said that they had like a story to tell about their trips that they went on to go see this device. So in a second, we're going to talk about OLED versus VRR. But Russ, tell your story, man. What's up?
So so there were 2 days of Xbox events. There was a Friday event that was like exclusive. Carrie will talk about that one. And then the Sunday event, which happened around the same time as the like launch and the Game Summer Showcase or whatever they were doing. And so like I knew the Xbox already existed before I like went into the building. Like it was a couple hours after that. So it was all kind of timed together, whatever. And they gave us a specific time to like go in and like sit down with the team and test everything. That's when we're talking about the Xboxes appearing in our hands, whatever. So we did that, and that's like an hour-long session. And then after that, we had like access to these pods. They called them pods. And it was like a room that was already pre-lit. And they're like, you can make your video in there. And then they said, here's your time slot. You have 25 minutes. And I'm like, what do you mean 25 minutes? Like 25 minutes with these handhelds. You can't actually turn them on. You can just hold them, and you can look at the login screen, and you have to film, B-roll, all that stuff at the same time. And as a creator, you guys are probably all like, holy crap, 25 minutes, because that's not enough time. Like it takes me, I make like 35, 40-minute videos. That takes me about 2 hours of filming to get to that moment, and then all the B-roll on top of that's another day of filming. And so I'm like 25 minutes, and I had about a half hour heads up. So I got my phone out and I wrote out this beautiful outline. Like I just like every single talking point that I'm going to say, in what order, it's going to be 15 minutes long. Like I had it all figured out, right? I put it all on my phone, and then like, okay, go time. And so I like go into the room, I set up my camera and everything, and I get there and I'm ready to hit record. And I realize, because I'm an idiot, my phone is my camera. And I've got it like faced away from me. So all my notes are facing the wall. I can't see my own outline, right? That I just spent all this time like making perfectly. Right. And so I just had to hit record. And by then I'm like, I got no time. So I just hit record and just like garbage dumped basically into the camera, and luckily I remembered most of my notes
at all.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the funny part for me, was that like you watch my video, I'm like, hey guys, just here chilling or whatever in LA. My heart rate is like 300 beats per minute. And I'm just like, oh my God, don't mess this up. Right. And so I ended up recording a 14-minute clip, which then got cut down to about 12 minutes once I took out my mistakes and stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know how I was able to do that. I felt like, those TV newscasters who just turn it on, right? I felt like that guy for like, 15 minutes. But that was my story. It was just like I made a video in 25 minutes, which was just crazy. And that included all my B-roll and stuff and everything else. So, yeah, crazy day. That was my story.
It was a great video. So, yeah, well worth it. And, certainly that time that you did to put down those notes, it came in handy. Just writing it down, I'm sure it did something in terms of remembering it later on. So it worked out.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of time to kind of ruminate before I started speaking, which helped. Yeah.
Next time, are you going to bring a separate camera, or are you going to bring a notepad? Like, what's your solution?
I don't know, because I don't want to hold my phone while I'm talking to look at my notes, because that would be unnatural. So I'll figure it out. I think this, if anything, gave me a little bit of confidence, like, okay, you can actually pull it off if you need to, kind of thing. So we'll see.
Gary, what's your story that you wanted to share?
So initially, when this was all going on, like a month or so before, I had known about the thing happening because Asus had told me, but they were not uncertain if I would be able to get in. And then it was revealed, like, I'm talking with Russ. He's like, oh, I'm in. I'm like, I don't think I got in. And they were like, oh, no, you didn't make it. I was like, oh, all right, well, them's the breaks. And then, stuff happens. And then they're like, oh, actually, we got you in. And, like you have the pre-briefing on Friday. And I was like, pre-briefing on Friday? And I was like expecting, like, I was like, oh, they just like put me in something, right? Like just to like, whatever. So I was like, oh, okay. So I had to be there at 1:30 at the Activision headquarters building, and I was like looking, and I was like, should I go there Thursday night? And I work Thursday nights at the data center, so I leave at I have a late shift then, so I leave at 7, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna be rushing just to get to a plane to take off to just try to fall asleep. And I was like, let me see what morning flights are like on Friday morning. So I look, and it's like, 8:45 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'll get there at 11:30 and I'll have 2 hours to get there. They email me that day. They're like, come 15 minutes early. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I'm going to my plane. It arrives late from San Francisco. And then they're like, all right, so it arrived late. No big deal. They just have to clean it up. And I'm like, all right, I'm only going to be gone 30 minutes. So I have an hour and a half to get there. I don't know what happened, but it was an hour before we could start boarding. And I'm like, oh man, this is really chewing into my time. So we take off, and there's lots of turbulence for whatever reason. Now, I don't care about turbulence because I've learned that airplanes can actually take a lot in the air. Like they can like rattle around a whole bunch and just be fine. But, there was also like this really weird thing. I always choose aisle seats because I just like to be able to stick my leg out so I can just, have leg room. And there's two people, like a couple, sitting in my seat and the middle seat. And I like you're sitting in my seat. So they get up and like get out of the way so that I can take the window seat. And I'm like, I have the aisle seat. And then they're like, oh, I'm like, the hell?
No way.
Like, yeah, like,
entitled.
Yeah, I was like, bought this. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Anyway, she was real scared. She's like gripping onto his arm while the whole thing. So I felt bad for her at that time. But there's a dude that had this like weird getup, all red robe. Like this goes down to like just past his knees. And apparently, I guess he like faints across a bunch of people on his aisle. So they have like this mini emergency, and he also brought a dog. So this dog is going up and down the aisle during this entire 6-hour trip while he's just splayed out, like, I don't know, sleeping or something. They had to move the people that he was on top of to like other seats that were available. So as we're landing and late, they're like, okay, there's people with connecting flights that have to get out. So we have to let those first, but then everyone else has to stay because paramedics have to come on board before anyone else can embark. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm really cutting it close with how much time I have here right now. So I wind up just like splitting. And, so I get out as fast as I can. I have about like an hour and I get to the ground transportation of LAX and it's like, you have to take a shuttle to go to the Uber place. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I get on the shuttle. I finally get an Uber. It takes forever to get to me because it has this big corkscrew thing. And I'm getting there. I managed to get to the block at like 1:30 on the dot. And I'm like running to this place where I have no idea where I need to go. And I'm just like looking at like what they like pointed out. So I get there like 1:33. Asus is calling me like, hey, are you guys coming? Like, you know, are you coming? What's going on? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm here. So I get there and I see, and like, I get in and it's Linus and Dave 2D waiting on me. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I'm making these guys wait. Like, ah, jeez. Like, what am I doing?
Oh my goodness.
But they got there like, 15 minutes early. I hope I wasn't like we weren't going to go in until 1:30, maybe a little bit. But anyway, I still made those guys late.
Yeah.
And I was like, goodness gracious. Anyway, we get ushered into this, like the thing, we start going through everything. But yeah, that was like just it was rough. Unlike Russ, when we got into our like pod, we had time forever. Like Dave 2D is like taking a bunch of shots, and Dave's like, "Hey, I feel like I'm taking up place." But I'm like, take your time. I just need a little bit of B-roll because they weren't showing us anything. Like they were like, "No, you can just record the menu."
Yeah.
I was like, "Just the menu?" Like he's like, "Yeah, you can pair it." And then Linus takes out all of his kit, and he has the Project Scarlet controller, the Xbox. It's a super limited edition controller, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, he just has this.
Harry's like, I want to make a video about this thing.
It's such that is like, I still love the Starfield controller. It's like my favorite limited edition controller. Like I really like how the colorway is, but that one is like, that was super sweet. Anyway, so I'm like taking photos and videos and stuff. And, I think Dave 2D also did his back at his place. He left that night, but Linus, I believe, did it then and there. And he was just typing up his script to just go over everything. And then I went back to my Airbnb just to like record. And for me, it was really just like finding good lighting. Thankfully, I had like a nice window coming in, and I just recorded on my phone because that's how I do things. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to record on my phone. But yeah, that was the getting there. My eyebrows were sweating. I was, and then like to get there late and have those guys waiting for me, I felt like a jerk.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, that's the story of me getting there early and like seeing everything, and then realizing that I had like a big scoop. So I was like, oh goodness gracious.
Yeah.
That was
I love that they just like, they're like, where do we fit this guy in? Throw him in with the famous people, like they just
put him up there with Linus and Dave.
Yeah. It was cool. Yeah, Dave actually knew me, so that was cool.
That's
that
very
was
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, the people over at Asus were asked about the panel that's going to be in this thing. They specifically said, this is Winston Gordon talking about it. He specifically said, we did look at OLED this year again. We did some R&D and prototyping with OLED, but it's still not where we want it to be when you factor VRR into the mix, and we aren't willing to give up VRR now. So my question for everybody on the show, and I'm going to start with Rich, which do you prefer on a low-powered device like these handheld PCs that we've been having, like all of the ones that we already have and the Nintendo Switch 2? Yeah, they go with VRR. Valve's is, I think, the only one that went with OLED instead. What's your preference?
Yeah, it's tough. It's pretty darn close to a tie, especially because Valve's OLED is a 90 hertz panel, right? So like in practice, a lot of like the frame time that you're going to get between the Steam Deck OLED and the ROG Ally, like it's pretty similar, right? You're going to get similar performance and not feel kind of a difference between perhaps like the input lag and stuff like that. So it's really close, but just for my own preference, when Carrie was talking about like image quality, and that rings true for like the still, right? Like the what it looks like at a moment in time. But what I favor more is what it looks like in motion. And in motion, I do prefer VR and having that ability to just have a smooth refresh rate. So I'm going to go with VRR, but just by an edge.
Russ, if you were building your own, which panel would you put in?
So I would go with VR as well. I think that is a big factor for me. And the OLED is nice, but yeah, I like all of the benefits. The 120 hertz. This gives me a lot of options for indie gaming and stuff too, which I really prefer. But I would say that if I had to choose a panel, like I'm making a handheld, I wouldn't use the Ally or the Steam Deck panel. I would use the Legion Go S panel, which is 1200p, 8 inches, so it's taller, which can be better for retro games, and it is 120 hertz and VRR, and I think the colors really pop on it too. So that is actually probably my favorite LCD VRR display. Is that one? I like that one better than the Ally one.
Yeah, the panel on the Legion Go S is really, really good. Like insanely good.
It is nice.
But I still also really like the one that's on the Ally X. And Ally, because it's the same panel.
Yep.
Carrie, they keep using the same panel over and over and over. Do you wish that they would switch?
So, all right, there's a lot I have to unpack here. I know I always go too far, but please indulge me for just a moment. There's a few things here. If you asked 2020 Carrie, I would have been against VRR, and I'm going to tell you why, especially on handhelds. VRR to me was a crutch that people would just use without really thinking about anything else, because I was so focused on going so low power and extending battery life that VRR is the opposite mindset of that. It's who cares about what I'm using? I'm just going to push it and I'm going to let the screen solve it, which means that you're basically going to get the worst battery life you could possibly get. Now, with the Ally and Ally X, I've typically always just done performance mode. So I've always limited myself to 17 watt on the Ally X and then just let the VRR sort it out. So I've had my cake and eat it too, but I was also thinking about this back in the old days when we were really trying to min-max stuff. We were using 40 hertz on the panel back in 2020 before the Steam Deck even existed. So the handheld scene in terms of PC gaming handhelds, we've always been ahead of the curve on what we were trying to do. Now that I have it, and especially with frame gen as it is, it's gotten a lot better. So like Ratchet and Clank, I'm playing at like 70 to 80 FPS with the settings that I have, good image quality, and it is genuinely great. So I am big on VRR native landscape displays today. More to the point, to what Asus was talking about when they had invited me out to Taipei to the Asus headquarters over a year ago now. They actually went in detail on why they didn't do even mini LED or OLED. And it all came down to power. And the OLED panel that they were prototyping was basically using like 2.5x the amount of power that the LCD and the Ally does now.
Oh, and that's a big jump.
It's huge. So I am thankful that Asus is making these engineering decisions on like, they are very considerate about how much everything on the system is using. And I think that is the wise choice. So I am in agreement. I'm in alignment with what Asus is doing. I still am an OLED fanboy through and through, and I have that for my main display. But until we can get that power use to, insofar as having the controller, it's not so much the panel itself, but apparently it's the controller for an OLED, and VRR is where things go sideways. So that specifically is what they were doing. And then mini LED is even more. So it was like kind of crazy to hear about that, like a full array local dimming. So it'll be interesting to see where Asus winds up on whatever next generation handheld panel that they produce. I'm also in agreement with all of you guys. Like the Lenovo Legion Go panel, that's on the Aoki Zoe A1X as well. That same panel, and that has an HX370, and I've been loving that. And like with really tuning up Strix Point, I'm like hitting Spider-Man Miles Morales at 1080p, using FSR, but or XeSS. I'm getting around like 100 FPS. So it's like really crazy to see the visuals that we're getting on the latest thing when you tune things up and how good it can look. But I think having a larger panel is something that I really like need now, especially on the Switch 2 with that large panel. You're like, oh man, it used to be 7-inch was like, okay, we need to hit at least this. But now 7-inch is the absolute minimum of what is an acceptable PC gaming handheld. Like if it's anything lower than 7-inch, you're like, don't even bother. But like 7-inch is like the absolute minimum that we're going. I would really prefer to have like 8-inch or like 8.2, 8.4. Really tried. That's what I would really love from Asus is like min-maxing that bezel, like just like a microscopic bezel on the top. Even if it has to like go wide, okay, no problem. That can eat into the controller portion of it, like the
right.
But make it like as like micro bezel as you can on the top and bottom. I think that's where I would really love Asus to go.
Right. So you kind of talked about why they don't do OLED and VRR, but do you think VRR is important? You said that VRR is important enough that you agree with their decision.
Based on the power things that they showed me and where they were, I would rather have VRR than having like a MIPI-based OLED panel that did not have a VR. Or even if it was EDP that was like a fixed frequency, I would rather have VRR LCD on a handheld.
Okay. This was not originally in the show notes, but you guys mentioned Gears Reloaded. Did you guys really get a chance to spend much time with that, or enough to say anything, or is that something for the future? Russ?
So yeah, on my end, I didn't. I'm such a rule follower. I think I'm the opposite of Carrie in that regard. Like I pushed the Xbox button, I hovered over the like turn on FPS thing, and I was like, no, I'll get in trouble, and I turned it off. You know what I mean? Like I'm such a rule follower. They never said we could do it, and so I was like, I don't think I'm allowed to do it. I'm the worst. Anyway, yeah, so I don't think I ever have a career as an investigative journalist, because I got to stay in my lane, Anyway, so we got to play like the intro, like the first battle scene where you're like breaking out of prison and you're shooting the bad guys, kind of learning how it works, and pick up your grenades for the first time. So we did that scene. It ran very smoothly, and that's why I wanted to check it. But it's probably the VRR is kicking in as well. But it felt 50 to 60 frames per second, and it was I did go into the game settings and saw that it was in high settings. So I was like, okay, they got this in 1080p high settings, and it feels about 50 frames per second. And so yeah, it looked good. It's a weird thing where when you're separated enough from the original version and then you play the upgraded one, you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly how it used to be as well. But then you look at the old one and you're like, oh man, this thing is so bad, So I need to go back and play like the 360 version and really kind of get a feel for how bad it would look compared to the remastered version, because it was more like it just aged up with my eyes at that point. So, but yeah, it looked good. It played really well.
I had that experience with the remake of Halo 1. Because I had never played the original one. And so I got that on Game Pass, and I was playing through, and I was actually live streaming it on my YouTube channel. And somebody in the chat said, push this button. So I pushed that button, and it switched over to the old graphics. And I just started laughing because it was so ugly. It was incredibly ugly. Dude. But at the time, people were just like, this is the most amazing thing we've ever seen in our lives.
I don't know if you guys were there, bump mapping. Yeah, that was
right.
Oh man, console gaming has bump mapping.
Yes,
it was so like crazy back then because like, look, there are bushes right there. Those are like bushes. Like we were just amazed that they had bushes because mostly, playing a game like Turok, whatever, it's just like corridors. Right. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so just the fact that there was like, flora was amazing, as opposed to like we didn't care how it looked. So anyway,
Carrie, you play much of Gears Reloaded?
So, I was playing, but I'm trying, like, they're literally I'm in the theater, right? And I'm trying to listen to the lady talk more than me playing. And truth be told, when I looked at it, and I'm not trying to, say anything bad about Gears Reloaded, but Gears Reloaded to me wasn't like outrageously better, especially now that if you have like an Xbox Series X and you play the 360, it'll automatically make it like 4K for you and make it look really good. And then all Gears Ultimate, so it's just like I was not really scrutinizing enough to like, okay, this does just looks like a polished Gears experience. I don't really feel like it's all that much great. To your credit, Russ, it was they had at least on mine they had a 60 FPS frame limit cap, which I disabled and started doing other settings.
Nice.
So I actually got it up to like about 85 FPS while I was playing, and just engaging different upscaling techniques. And then when I was like, oh man, it's getting 85 FPS, this looks pretty good. And then I went into the TDP controls and I saw it chewing up like 27 watt. And I was like, let me go to performance. And that did nothing. It just kept on using the same amount of power. I'm like, oh, I guess that doesn't work. This was on the HX3 Z2E version. So it seemed good. You had mentioned this before, Bill, where you said that ostensibly this should all be better because it's not running a whole bunch of stuff. I don't believe that's the case at all. Like they still have to fix how Windows is driving the chip. I'm going to be doing a video on the Switch 2 versus the Steam Deck soon, and I've managed to like increase performance on the Steam Deck at Switch 2 power usage by like 50% because SteamOS is not actually managing the chip better at that very low TDP. So you could say SteamOS has bloat, or you could just say it's not driving it correctly. But like that's the same type of situation, is that if you're just mismanaging how this thing is within a given spec, then it's just being mismanaged regardless of whatever you're running or not. So I don't know if it's going to run well. Like they have to fix that part, and I hope they do. But that's a side thing that I just wanted to bring up.
I just realized that we didn't talk about the Xbox Ally X price.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're already almost an hour into the podcast. But, Rich, what do you think the price is going to be for the Xbox Ally X?
That one is tougher for me to like figure out. And what is the current ROG Ally X currently at?
I think it's 800.
Yeah.
But why don't you wax a little bit about it and I'll look it up.
Yeah. The reason this is harder for me to figure out is because like the ceiling is like endless, right? And most likely, I mean, we're going to see something that is similar to what the Ally X currently is.
900.
900.
Yeah,
that sounds more likely
just,
because
it had a $100 price hike over the past month. Like I saw it popping up.
Right.
And so now it's $899 for the 1 terabyte model. They still have a 2 terabyte model. It's now $1,000.
Yeah.
So that's the pricing now.
Yes.
900 to 1,000.
So I would expect it to be the same, right? Like I expect the Xbox Ally X is going to come in at the same price that the ROG Ally X is currently at. So that makes the most sense to me. I know that there's the possibility of like Microsoft subsidizing, and so maybe there's a chance it comes in lower, but I'm not really entertaining that at this point. We'll see, I guess, but I think it's going to be closer to what the Ally X is today.
I think it's going to be $100 more than the Ally X is today, and the reason why is because it's got a more powerful chipset in it. It's got the Z2E chipset. It's got more RAM. The RAM is
24 gigs on the Ally X and the Xbox Ally X.
But it has faster RAM.
Yes, it does. 8,000 megatransfers versus 7,500.
Right.
Yes.
So it has faster RAM. It has the adaptive triggers or whatever they call the triggers. I don't think that really raises the price all that much.
Triggers.
But the impulse triggers. Thank you. But those things, they could add up and they might not have a choice, even if Microsoft is subsidizing. Like they might be subsidizing to get it down to $100 more than the ROG Ally X currently is. Russ, what do you think for a price for that?
I don't think Microsoft's going to subsidize because what is the value? They're going to shoot themselves in the foot if they subsidize because they've already they've opened up. This is not a Xbox handheld. They're not making money off sales unless someone goes into the Xbox store and buys it. This thing is going to have Steam on it. It's going to have Epic Game Store. It's going to have GOG. So they've kind of shot themselves in the foot when it comes to like, oh, we'll make it back in software. Like they by making it a good deal for us, which I'm glad they're doing, the Steam and everything else, right? They also are making it a non-exclusive handheld, which is probably going to get more sales, but is also probably not going to get more software sales because people are going to use what they want. And so I don't see that kind of old console subsidized to make the software back approach that we all know and love from 10 years ago. I don't see that happening here. But what I think that they may have is deals. Like they may be able to have additional weight that they can, hey, AMD, we're Microsoft, you're going to sell it at this price. You know what I mean? So there might be something there that Asus doesn't have. So there's a little bit of that to it. I don't think that Asus is going to, like, the reason why I think they partnered is not because they thought that Microsoft's going to give them additional money to put their name on it. I think that Asus wanted to attach their name to Microsoft, to be able to say, like, this is good for them to be like, hey, we are at the tier of partnering with Microsoft and no one else is, true. And after all the PR stuff that they've gone through over the past couple of years, that's probably the smart move just in terms of optics. And so I think that's why they partnered, is to have that Microsoft optics, not because of any sort of deal or whatever. So I'm seeing this as being a $1,000 console.
Yeah.
Carrie, over under on his $1,000 console.
No, I'm right. I think $1,000 is like, they're very mindful that $999 is like this ceiling that they should not breach. And it's been slowly bumping up, but I feel like everyone is vastly aware of how gamers perceive pricing on hardware, and it is largely filtered through the lens of how inexpensive hardware is. I think the only saving grace, whether it's that much or not, is that the Switch 2 is a lot more expensive than the Switch 1. And, it's $450 and $500 with the bundle. But people still see that $500 number for the Switch 2. So now the Switch 2 has, for better or worse, made PC gaming handhelds a larger allowance to increase in price. When it comes to the chip, the only thing that I could figure is that the HX370 is a 12-core CPU with 4 P cores and 8 E cores. So that is not, there's 8 CPU cores on the Z2E, but it still has the 16 CU GPU on there. So it almost looks as if that the Z2E might be binned parts of the HX370, which AMD has been collecting since the HX370, because the HX370 has been out for a long time now, for a year and change. So if AMD has been collecting bad binned chips to create Z2E parts, they're making lemonade out of whatever lemons they have. And they could have made a Strix Point version of this, right? Like they could also just have sold, but they're looking to make this a Z2E because the AI stuff is still activated on the Z2E. It's not disabled like it was on the Z1E. So for all intents and purposes, this looks to be like a full fat HX370 with just those cores likely disabled. I don't think that they're just not there. It's still an expensive chip, right? So that is the part that really gets me mixed up. I also agree with Russ. I don't think Microsoft is subsidizing this at all. I don't think that they're doing anything. I think the only thing that Microsoft might make concessions on is potentially some deal with the Windows licensing being nothing, maybe. And they might also sweeten the deal, which I would think that they're going to do with like 3 months of PC Game Pass or something. That is something that I think that's the extent of where Microsoft may go. I'm not sure that they would actually pay for any of the hardware to lower the price. So with that in mind, I think that Asus is going to really try to get this at a $999 price overall, because going higher than that, I think, is like suicide for it. And people already feel $1,000 makes this DOA as it is. People really feel it should be $500 and $800. Like that's where they are. There's just no coming to grips with it. How that's going to work out when it actually shakes out, I'm not sure. But I think it is $999 is what the price is going to be for the Z2E.
You got me thinking. Microsoft is partnering for this handheld. Like they could. It's not going to hurt them. They could put a 1-year Game Pass on this thing.
Right. Yeah, like
can you imagine if they did that? It's not going to cost them anything other than lost costs of people buying it. But that's a big draw right there. But like a free year of playing any game I want. That's all.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea as well, Russ. And I'm only saying that to also diffuse any backlash of, well, this is not an Xbox. I can't play all my Xbox games. But if you gave them a year worth of Game Pass, and they have that, it's like, oh, all of these games are here. And then when the Game Pass thing goes out in a year's time, they're like, oh, where's my Xbox? It's like there's so much
Y'all
time.
got any more of that Game Pass?
Yeah. I think that would probably, if I was running things, I would also agree with you, Russ. I think that doing a year instead of 3 months is far, far better. Especially if it was just PC Game Pass, not Ultimate, right? Just giving PC Game Pass this way. They don't have Xbox or Ultimate and Cloud, so it's literally just for the handheld. I think that's a lot better for multiple reasons. When we really get down to like the systems that they are, it's such a weird thing, and there's parts of there where you almost feel like because the MSI Claw had everything built into the game bar like months ago, that was Microsoft talking with MSI as well, and something just like went away. And then they aligned with Asus. And the only reason I say that is because from optics wise, how we're looking at this, Xbox experience is in a far better, more complete state than I feel like the Xbox Ally is, because it literally is just an Ally with those Duke controllers slapped onto it. It just feels like it's also thicker. I don't know. There's some things about it that I'm just like, I kind of like the Ally X ergonomics and size better in my preference. I'm not saying that it's not comfortable, but it just feels like Microsoft really needed something more than Asus needed something, and Asus was like, let's do this thing, and they just caught up to what they needed to do. This is me completely speculating. No one told me this, so that's just my feelings on it.
Well, for me, I'm way more interested in the software than I am the hardware,
Right.
but the price of the hardware is extremely interesting, and if they don't get that price point right, that's a huge loss on their part. Rich posted over on his YouTube channel a poll asking his audience what they thought the price should be. Rich, what's that sitting at right now?
Yep. So it was more, it's kind of geared towards the leaks, right? So it's, do you think that the Xbox Ally could be priced at $499? And about a third said it's plausible. About 2/3 said it's definitely going to be higher. There's like one person seemingly that voted it's definitely going to be lower. So kudos to that person. And
If it is lower, that person's got some celebrating to do.
Right, for sure.
I told you.
I knew it. About 5% of people said I don't know. So yeah, that's where it is. About 1/3, 2/3 split. So I think that's fair. I think that's about what I expected.
Go to youtube.com/fanthedeck and vote in the poll so that we can see what you guys think. All right. We've been talking about the Xbox stuff for quite a while. These guys weren't on last week's episode. Rich and I spent Wednesday's episode. Yeah. Rich and I spent quite a long time talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, which has already outsold all Steam Decks. It's crazy how fast this thing is just flying off of the shelves. People are saying it's the best video game or best console launch of all time, just as far as getting the devices in hands. Scalpers are taking losses, which is always great to hear, unless you're a scalper, in which case I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry for you. But Russ, what do you think about the Switch 2? How much time have you spent playing it?
So I've been playing it every evening for a little bit, I'm testing a few things like GameCube emulation and whatnot on it. I think it's good. I've gotten used to how big it is. My biggest observation in the beginning was like, man, I don't know if people are ready for how big this thing is. But everyone that I've like handed it to, like just complete like noobs or whatever, and they're just like, oh, this is great. Not even in like anything like, oh, it's too big or any of that kind of stuff. So maybe that was me just getting a little bit too far in the weeds. I think it's good. There was just an update to the MIG Switch flash cart that now allows it to work on it. So I haven't done that yet because I'm just a little bit nervous. There's some sort of, log file that's happening while I do that. And I'm going to wait a bit.
Note to the editor. The editor is me. Bleep out when he says MIG switch. And now bleep out when I say MIG switch both times. Go ahead.
And yeah, that's the big thing is like that the functionality of it is great, but it really is a Switch 1.5 to me, at least right now. So it's hard with a console. I feel like you got to grade a console a year after launch, not the 2 weeks after.
Yeah. Rich and I were calling it the Switch Pro. What were you about to say, Rich?
Yeah, I think Russ is right in terms of like judging it like a year later. And I think that is part of what is leading or lending towards the conversation now of a Switch 1.5 and a Switch Pro. And the way I framed it in my video is like what you get for the money, right? And it just, in a year from now, when there's a ton of games, what you get for the money, that value proposition changes, right? But right now, what you get for the money, if like someone asked, a good friend of mine who will eventually buy the Switch 2 asked me like, should you buy it? I was like, yeah, just not right now, right? Like you don't need to buy it now. I'm guessing you're not dying to play Mario Kart World. If you really want to play Cyberpunk then on a Switch, then sure, right? Like that's pretty much it.
Gary, what's your thoughts on the Switch 2 so far?
I think it's great because much like the Switch 1, the Switch 1 was honestly a very good handheld. And I people always dogged on it like, oh, look at the Switch 1, look how bad that looks. The Switch 1, especially the America one, OLED, those versions, those things were you could not match what the Switch OLED was doing in terms of power because it was taking around 3 watts total, right? So the TDP was like 2. You can't even really run the Steam Deck without like, I've done it before. I've like parked every core except one. I had that running at 400 megahertz. I put the RAM at its lowest. I had to like push and shove just to hit 4 watt total. So the Switch OLED is still a watt less than that and was playing games like The Witcher 3, right? So like the Switch 1 hit way above its weight class for what it was, even though people dogged it. And the Switch 2 finds itself to be in the same place. It does use more power, but when you take a look at how much power it's doing, now this is why I brought it up earlier today, is because I've been doing this in the background. I've been doing too much in the background as it is, but I've been trying to align the Steam Deck, and I'll have a big Steam Deck versus Switch thing, and trying to align. I reached out to CD Projekt Red, I reached out to Hello Games, and I was like, hey, can you guys just tell me what settings you're using? And both of them didn't reply. So now I have to, do that work. But I'm trying to actually make an apples to apples and also bring the Steam Deck at its lowest TDP, but also compensate like the Switch 2 does. And when you look at it from the performance angle and what you get out of that in terms of image quality and fidelity, it is the champion right now. It is the low power champion. There is no word. Like I don't really have to do a video to show you that. I can show you how much of a difference it is as when I get to that point. But regardless of anything, it is fantastic. Now, the things that I don't like, I think that they could have done a better job on the analog sticks on the Joy-Cons. I just feel like they're just like wider, like they're just bigger discs, and I don't like them. Some of them it just doesn't feel fantastic. It just feels like, I don't know, it's a sloppy upgrade for Joy-Cons as far as I'm concerned. The mouse controls is a cool feature, but you kind of need an accessory to make it comfortable to use. So I still love that idea. And I also love that you can just plug in any USB mouse and that'll work. So there's like lots of things where this is actually kind of super cool. And the thing that just really boggles my mind is that they put a 19.7 watt hour battery in this thing, and yet it's heavy. Like it's like 100 grams and change away from the Ally X. And the Ally X has like 4 times the battery capacity when the battery is the most heaviest part on a handheld. So where's all this weight coming from that Nintendo's putting in the Switch 2? I don't know where all of this weight is coming from. So I feel like they could have done a much better job with how much weight this whole thing has. But maybe it's the magnets or whatever that they have that is just also increasing. Who knows? It's a very heavy device for how small of a battery it is. And I wish the Joy-Cons were better. So I'm kind of like, 50-50 on some things. But I do enjoy, like, Switch Pro or whatever, fine. I think it's awesome. I think it's really great, and I'm going to be playing through Echoes of Wisdom, and I have been playing through that a little bit. There are some games that have this weird, like the LCD is just like the response time looks like it's weird, or it's just an in-game motion blur. Hello Games, the No Man's Sky, doesn't have it as pronounced. So I feel like it is like almost like the settings that it is, like if they're putting it in like locking it to 60 FPS, but it's running in a 120 hertz container rather than just making the display run at 60 hertz. That might be a problem that this is having. So there's probably some growing pains. I'm not sure that I'm seeing any VRR action to speak of. So there's like, I think we're like, to address like some of the guys, like it feels like there's still some things that they need to kind of bake a little bit more. Also, there's like a weird thing where if you like plug it into a power source that is not giving it a lot of power, it bumps it up to another power state. So you can actually get worse battery life than not having it plugged in on some battery banks. Like you will deplete the internal battery before the battery bank goes out in some instances. So there's like really weird things that they have. Yeah, that overall I think it's awesome. I think it's great, and I think it would have sold more if they just named it Super Switch.
Well, I don't think that they needed to worry about it selling more because it sold like crazy.
Yes, it did.
So let's talk about Mario Kart real quick. I have been playing a ton of Mario Kart. It's currently got an 87 on Metacritic, which I don't think that an 87 is better than an 86 or anything like that. But generally, when you have a high score on Metacritic, it's usually indicates that you've got a pretty good game on your hands. I think that this is the best Mario Kart has ever been. I'm having an absolute blast with it. I was playing it this morning, and one of the things that I really, really like, because I didn't put too much time into just the regular races on when playing online. Usually I've been going for the new mode, which is knockout mode. The regular races are very different than they used to be. It used to be that you would pick a set of courses, like the Mushroom Cup or the Fire Flower Cup or whatever, and you would do 4 races, and then at the end, you would have, this is the person who won. But because it's this open world where you can drive anywhere, basically what happens is you run a race, and then when you get to your destination at the end of that race, it says, hey, where do you want to go next? And it shows you 3 options for where you want to go, and they're the 3 closest races to where you just raced to. This didn't click with me until today that that's what they were doing, because I really wanted to run Rainbow Road, because Rainbow Road is the best freaking Rainbow Road it's ever been. So I was like, okay, well then we got to get over to Peach's thing so that we could do Rainbow Road, and people kept voting away from that. So I was playing, and I was like, okay, we finally got to Peach's thing. When we finish this one, we'll be able to pick to go to Rainbow Road. Wasn't an option. I was like, no. But I'm really enjoying the game. It's very, very fun. The amount of, I know it's an $80 game that we got for $50 because we bought the bundle. But the thing about it that I really appreciate, even though it is an $80 game, is that all of the stuff that's in there is just in there, and there's no microtransactions or anything like that. So my question to all of you, would you prefer that this be a cheaper game that had microtransactions, or are you glad that it's a complete package all in one without any microtransactions? Russ?
So I hate microtransactions. So just on principle, I want all the game all at once, and at a higher price point. I think I'm okay with that. But I don't think that there's enough here, at least now, to justify the $80 for me. Like free roam or whatever they call it. Like when I started that up, the first night that I had the Switch, I was like, this is so awesome. Like I'm playing around, I'm just driving on these roads. I can like take these jumps, and I get like this golden bag of food that has food in it that also somehow unlocks some sort of like costume thing. Like this is amazing. And then 10 minutes later, like I was not getting any of those perks anymore. And I was like, this is a little bit stale, and then
right, you unlocked all of them, right?
Right. I unlocked a few of them, right? But then I took I went to LA. I didn't take the Switch 2 with me, and I haven't moved over my kids' profiles yet, so they're just playing on my profile. So when I got home, they had unlocked everything. And so the next time I went in free roam, I was like, this is so boring now. Like there's no incentive for me to keep going. It's relaxing. I like that. Like I like that I can drive around and people aren't throwing crap at me. Like that's like the best thing in the world. But that's about it, and I can do that for about 10 minutes. So I need more. I don't know. I want a little bit more with the free roam. I want, I want it to feel like a world. And I don't really feel that just yet for my $80.
I feel like free roam is absolutely disappointing. My grandson loves it because it's not a race. He can just drive around. There's no good way for me to play with him in free roam on one Switch. Apparently, you can only do that with multiple Switches, which sucks so bad. There's no good reason for that. Rich, what are your thoughts on Mario Kart? $80 versus DLC or microtransactions?
Yeah, very, very similar to Russ. Certainly wouldn't want microtransactions, but I don't think that this justifies the $80. The way I said it in the Wednesday podcast is $80 is a mold breaking price, right? Like they're breaking the status quo with that price, and I don't think that Mario Kart in terms of gameplay does the same thing. It doesn't break the mold. It doesn't break the status quo. You could argue certainly that it's the best Mario Kart. I would say probably top 3, right? Like for me, it's like Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart DS, and this is probably in that conversation with it. But not enough here to break the mold. And so I also don't think it justifies its $80 price point. And, you raise a good point with many of us, I think all of us, like you said, got it for 50. On that same token, right? If that's the price that most people will pay, there's also no reason that Nintendo had to price it at 80, right? So like
that's true.
They were willing to give it up at 50. So why bother making it the $80 price? I think the clear reason, to me at least, is to make it feel like even more incentive to get that bundle, right? Like even more for you to feel like, oh, I got to spend the $50 more, get this bundle, make sure I get this for 50, not for 80. And yeah, it just, like with so many things that I've been talking about with Nintendo lately, although I enjoy a lot of the actual product, it's not feeling like they're giving you the value for the product that they once did.
I want to just quickly chime in on that. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but that is 100% the case that they were actually okay giving away for 50. And the reason I can speculate as much as that is that I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the Mario Kart bundle, there are 2 different versions that people were getting. There's one that's baked into the cardboard itself, and then there's one where they just slapped a sticker on it and put a code in the box.
Wait, I didn't know there was a difference. I got the latter one.
Yes.
I have a code in the box.
Code in the box is they put a code in the box. They slapped a sticker on on the 450 version, slapped a sticker on it, and put a code in your box. The one that has the Mario Kart Online baked into the actual cardboard, Mario Kart is attached to the system. It is not attached to your account. You have to go to the store, and it just unlocks on any account. So there's 2 different versions of the Mario Kart bundle. And one of them is attached to your account. One of them is attached to the system. And the one that was attached to the system was the one that they had planned to have. But then they were like, oh, everyone's buying this one. And they just put stickers and codes and just increase the amount.
So you're telling me that your dude in Japan who works for them that calculates all that stuff, he got it wrong.
He got it wrong.
And then he did.
Inspired.
Yeah. This is the second time he's got it wrong. Animal Crossing Amiibos was his first big blunder, and now this one.
Just to put a finer point on what you're saying, because you're almost implying it, but what you're saying, right, is that like they had an amount of bundles that they were going to sell. They saw that wasn't going to be enough, so they just did more. They just made more based on the base console and gave you more of the bundle, which
that is 100% the case, because they just slapped stickers on them, had people open them up and put codes in.
Yeah, which just, like you said, goes to show that they didn't mind giving this away at $50.
The only reason I found that out is because I got both. I have both of them. So I opened up mine that I got from GameStop, and then another one I had come in from Best Buy, the one that I pre-ordered in Japan from a Starbucks. That came in, and that had the one baked in. And I was like, oh, that's a little weird. And then I'm opening up, I'm like, they didn't give me my code. Like, someone stole my code. And I'm like, and then I read it, and it says, go to the Nintendo store to get your Mario Kart. And I was like, oh. So I go to the Nintendo store. That's the one I wound up giving to my son. And it just downloaded. And I was like, oh, interesting. So yeah, they for sure were just fine having it sold for $50 because they increased that amount when they needed to. They just bumped that number.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just imagining, you know, this huge warehouse in Vietnam where they were putting it together. And then the boss comes in. He's like, hey, just got off the phone. Open them all up. Put this sticker inside. You know what I mean?
My God.
Like, slap the
all
sticker.
the workers are like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I can show you guys a picture of both of them. It's now you know. Yeah, now you know.
Now you know. Before we move on from Nintendo stuff, we got a message over at which by the way, you can leave a voice message for us over at voicecast.app/nerdnest. And Matt sent in an idea that he had, and he wonders what we think.
Hey, Bill. I know it's really early days for the Switch 2, but what does everyone think the next hardware revision for the Switch 2 might be in a couple years? Would it be a OLED screen, maybe a Switch 2 Lite, or a little Switch 2 mini box that only works with a TV? I rarely play my Switch 1 in portable mode, so a version with no battery and no screen and a cut down price would actually interest me.
Rich, would you want to get a Switch that didn't have a screen or a battery that you just plugged into your TV?
I wouldn't, but I can see the allure, especially if you're like trying to just shave off those dollars, right? And you just want to spend less to just get the parts that you need, right? But I'm kind of the opposite. I almost never play docked. My daughter certainly plays docked. I think, but I just always play handheld. So not for me. So to his question, I think the most likely would probably be the OLED, especially if it's OLED VRR. That definitely seems like the next thing for them. I can't imagine them going light just yet without the battery. Like,
I know exactly what it's going to be.
What is it?
Switch Lights first. Switch 2 Lights first.
Really?
It's going to be 2 years and 6 months after the release date of the Switch 2.
Yeah.
And then a year after that and a few months, it'll be the Switch 2 OLED. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, I'm waiting. How do you know?
Because that's the Nintendo playbook. They did it for the Switch. They do it for the 3DS. They did it. You know, you have the 3DS, the 3DS XL. You know, they have a cadence of what they're going to sell you. So everyone wondering why they didn't have an OLED, it's because they're going to sell you one later. That's
well, but also you look. I mean, look at what Asus said.
right.
We could have gone with OLED VRR, but you said specifically the power just would not work.
Yeah.
The Switch 2 has a 19 point whatever watt hour battery.
Yeah.
They're not going to be throwing an OLED, like maybe they put a bigger battery in there, but that's not in Nintendo's playbook either.
No, it isn't. Yeah. So, but yeah, so to answer the question, I'm going to put a friendly bet, no money bet, that the Switch 2 Lite happens first, and then the Switch 2 OLED happens later.
My friendly bet is for Switch 2 OLED, but the truth is I never bet against Kerry.
I was going to say, well, you guys make a bet, and the loser has to lick a Nintendo Switch cart.
That sounds terrible.
Right.
It does sound terrible.
I'm in. I'll take some of that action.
All right, I'm in. I got it.
All right.
I'm down.
Okay, so guys, what did Carrie say? 2 years and 6 months?
Yeah.
All right, in 2 years, 6 months, we'll find out who wins. And one of these guys is licking a Switch cart. Russ, I'm not licking a Switch cart, so I'm not making a bet with you. But what do you think? Switch Lite or Switch 2 OLED first?
No, I think Switch Lite. I mean, because the Switch OLED is like, oh, now you can make an OLED. Like it's one after the other, just kind of makes people even angrier. Whereas the Lite, like, okay, yeah, they're trying something new, and so I think that's enough. The set-top box thing is a neat idea. I don't know how many people are going to want that, though. You know what I mean? I mean, I often use dock. Like when I'm playing a dock, my kid's playing handheld, so we're kind of using it back and forth. But every time I see my Switch sitting in the dock, I'm like, oh, this is. Like, are they messing up the battery right now? Like, by keeping it topped up all the time, you know, like, am I losing battery life by just leaving it in dock mode all the time? And so I
will say there is an option now to have it only charged to 90%.
Oh, that's good.
So make sure you turn that on. It's not on by default. I'm sorry I interrupted. What were you saying?
No, that's a good point. But yeah, that was like one of the reasons why I'm like, oh yeah, I could see a set top one working. Like if it was just me, like a single guy or whatever, didn't have kids playing it in handheld mode, that would be pretty tempting, especially if they make it cool looking, you know, that'd be pretty awesome.
What would you pay for it?
Like $350? You know what I mean?
I think
no screen, no
too
battery,
much.
no
I would pay
controls.
$300.
So
Okay.
Hold on. I want to just entertain an interesting idea, and I don't think that Nintendo wouldn't do it. I think Nintendo would be okay doing it. The pricing on accessories is like so out of control. Tariffs I know have affected it, but if you look at the Switch 2 dock, it's like $140 or $130. The Switch 2 Joy-Cons are $100 with tax. So you're like almost at $250 for Joy-Cons and a dock. And you're like, man, if I just pay like $200 more, I get a whole Switch 2 as well. So if $200 is the Switch 2 price, if they just came out with a console, a set-top box console with no controllers, you had to buy the controllers separate, and that was like $200, I think that is something that Nintendo might do. I don't know if they would say, no controller, go ahead and buy another controller. But right now, the price. This is also the same thing that happened with the Switch 1, to be honest. Joy-Cons were like $70. The dock was like $50. And I was like, man, for like $150 more, I can get a whole other Switch. So I've always just like, let me buy another Switch than get all this stuff.
Yeah. What was the PSP TV price?
Oh, goodness. I only bought it on fire sale out of a Radio Shack for like $20.
But I want to say it was between like 1 and 150.
I think so. I think it was like 150.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. I think a set-top box for a Switch 2 makes a lot of sense. I personally do. I think it makes a lot because it's.
So do I.
I think it's. Did any of you guys see the Cyberpunk Digital Foundry video?
Yeah,
I haven't watched the whole thing, but I saw the beginning of it.
So it's really compelling because it finds itself like trading blows in certain regards. So because of it having better texture compression and a gig of extra VRAM, the texture quality is a decent bump up over the Series S, but then you can see that it doesn't have the capability of doing as much geometry. It can't push as much geometry and like crowds. It's like bereft of crowds like the Series S can do, and at a higher FPS like the Series S can do. So the Series S is clearly more performant, and if it just had a bit more RAM, it could have those textures. So really, that's where the Series S finds itself, is that it just needs a little bit more RAM to facilitate that. But outside of that, you have something that, I think Series S is pretty good insofar as the value, or used to be good for the value. Now it's like out of control. So if the Switch 2 set-top box could come in to supplant the Series S price problem, I don't know. I think it's pretty good. I think that they have to be a little bit clever by not including controllers. Like, is that too taboo to have a console without controllers? Like, you have to buy the controller separate?
I don't know. I think it's crazy to not sell a controller with a console. It's got to come with a controller.
If that's the case, then it's going to be $350.
Yeah. To give you context, the PlayStation TV was $99 introductory price.
That's impressive.
Did it come with a controller?
Price?
No.
I don't think it did. I don't see it.
Yeah, see, I think like it's far better to have a snappy price and like hit them up with some accessories, because a lot of these people might already have Switch controllers and stuff, like Bluetooth controllers. So it's like, I already have that. So, okay, I'd rather have this. If they can hit like 200 or 250 I think $200 is a nicer price. And that's like, that would be pretty huge for them to just do a set-top only box. And if you take a look at the price difference of the dock and the Joy-Cons, you're pretty much at $200 anyway. So I don't know. I think it's worthwhile, especially because it actually does. When you push it to like, I think that it's like effectively at like 15 watt or so TDP. So it's like 22 watt ish when you're pulling from thing. It doesn't take any power. It takes like 3 times less power than a Series S. A little bit less. But
they're not going to ramp the power up because they want it to perform the same as it would on the Switch.
It would be exactly the same. That right there is the Switch Lite and Switch OLED issue, because the Switch Lite uses the Marico chipset of the Switch 1, the X1.
Right.
So they need to go to a better node to do a Switch Lite and a SWOLED too. And this way the smaller battery gets compensated from the better node, and you get probably better or comparable battery life, even though it's going to be in a smaller device with a smaller battery.
Well, it's a problem more so with the Lite, right? Where you have to be in a smaller shell
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
it's you may be using more power, but at least you have the option potentially of having a bigger battery.
Yeah.
You know what's funny to me is the idea of you say the Switch Lite. How big would the Switch 2 Lite be?
That's why I think
would it be
the
Switch
2 Lite
size?
is weird. It's going to be weird if they do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they that's their playbook. They come out with a smaller one, and then they come like the 3DS had a 2DS and a 3DS XL. So they make variations of their hardware all the time because that's what
For
they do.
sure.
It's the Nintendo playbook, and they have not deviated from that in a long time.
But how big is it going to be? A Switch Lite, is it going to be the same size as the original Switch Lite? Or is it going to be bigger because the Switch 2 is a bigger device?
It's going to be the size.
No,
of
I got the answer. It's going to be a Switch SP. It's going to be a clamshell.
Oh,
see,
dude, that would
better.
that would actually be awesome.
That's fine.
That would be sick.
I don't think they'll do it.
I think
It's like a 3DS
It's
at that point.
clamshell,
You know what
and
I
you can
mean?
play it vertically. That's see now I'm asking for too much.
I think that's a great idea. I think that is like that's something that they should do. It should be the Switch 2 SP, and then people will be like, "Oh, well, I need that," because that's what they'd say.
I would say that it would be a foldable screen.
Yeah, you just I mean, it'd be, like, but yeah, you could have. Then you don't have to worry about like getting cases to protect the screen because it's already protected because clamshells are superior. Yeah.
That's fire. I was gonna say a Switch 1 size, and you could put Switch 1 Joy-Cons on it, but that's much better. I like Switch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they're going to have to compensate on the size of the controller aspect of it so that it can fit all in there.
Yeah.
But they've already done that, right? Like they've already grafted it onto the Switch Lite. Do we have any numbers of how good the Switch Lite sold? I feel like no one bought it just because you couldn't dock it, and like it was just like worse overall. It was like, I can't take off the controller, so if I get stick drift, it's like attached to my system.
It's funny because that's what we got for my daughter and my wife when Animal Crossing came out. We were all trapped at home during the pandemic, so we were all sitting around playing that. And then when I got the Switch 2, my daughter said, "Hey, can I get your Switch so that I can dock it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. As soon as I'm done with all of my stuff."
Right. Yeah.
Did anybody find the answer?
Yeah, they're
to
saying
the
about
question?
25 million units compared to like the 150 of total Switch
that's
sales.
still a lot. I think I think that goes to show you just how cost conscious a lot of people are, that they are willing to trade not being able to dock it, a smaller screen, slightly less. Well, the battery life is actually pretty good on the Switch Lite because it was America.
Yeah.
It's comfortable as hell to use, though. Like, it is very comfortable in the hand.
Right. Yeah. So, there's definitely people that just like smaller things, and I think it's a good option. So, I think the SP is like a fantastic idea. I really do, because then you get to have a big size screen because it can accommodate the whole thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, if you could just like really get that like tight and have it, man, if you could have like an 8-inch, but that thing the Switch 2 still has big borders. So I was like always like looking at it, I was like, how much bigger are they going to make the SWOLED? Like the SWOLED 2 is going to be like 8.4 inch or something.
They can't make it, they can't shrink it down.
No, yeah. So, but look at
they can't keep the same screen size and shrink the device down because of the Joy-Con sizes defined.
I should look at it. I should get just a measuring tape and just like, because you can see the borders on the Switch 2. Yeah, you can see the bezels. And the SWOLED is the same size as the Switch 1, but it's just inside, because the bezels on the Switch 1 were giganto.
So here's my next feature of the SP.
Here we go.
Is that it's going to have a USB port at the top of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you have your screen and the USB is on the top. You're going to be able to flip it upside down and then put it in a Switch 1 dock and play it docked. That's my idea.
Picture it.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't
Like,
understand.
I can flip it
So
over.
it's
So then the
10
controls are going to be kind of flopping over.
Are you saying full
know what I
10
mean?
mode or?
Oh, tent mode.
Maybe
tent
full
mode,
10
right?
mode. I don't know, but I just think, tent mode could work too. But I was thinking you just plop the thing in and
just
then
have the
the
screen
bottom
up.
half just kind of flops over. It might be a little bit weird looking, or maybe they make it cute and it flops behind or something. But that's the idea, is that it would also be dockable. I don't think a Switch 2 dock, because that'd be too big. So it may be a Switch 1 dock. I don't know. It's an option.
I think I for sure think a Switch 2 Lite and a Switch 2 OLED are like a foregone conclusion at this point, myself, especially when they get a node decrease. I think the set-top box one is really the one that is a big question mark for me. I don't know if they'll do it or not. I think it's wise, but I don't know.
I think that they should. I don't think they will.
Real quick, you mentioned comfort of the Switch Lite, and I've been meaning to ask you guys in terms of ergonomics. Am I the only one? You know how in Mario you hold the run button and then you tap the jump button. So I hold the run button with like the top of my thumb, and then
pivot down.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who hits the analog stick, and that is a complete like annoyance, and I can't get over it? Has everyone figured out how to maneuver around that?
I don't have a Switch.
No,
Lite.
It happens. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, on Switch 2's like that
On
too.
Switch
you know,
2,
like
same thing for me.
Yeah. And Switch Lite, I can feel that. Yeah, I don't like it. I've never liked it. I usually comment about it in my videos, but yeah, it's not uncommon. But I hate it. Yeah, especially for those games, Donkey Kong Country, Mario World.
Yes.
Yeah, drives me nuts.
So like
The thumbstick placement of the right Joy-Con on the Switch and the Switch 2 is one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen Nintendo do.
Yeah.
It should have been up at the top, symmetrical, because when your thumbs are up at the top, you are basically pushing. And they figured it out on the Wii U.
Yeah.
You're pushing down, and that makes it much more easy to hold. But they decided to make it so that you could hold the Joy-Con sideways.
They prioritize
Who does that?
Yeah. Yeah.
What were you saying?
especially
Rich?
on the Switch Lite, which you can't pull the Joy-Cons out anyway. So just put them both up top.
Yes,
Yes.
You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just that, right? Like it's I was going to say the JSOC scripts, right? Like we were talking about grips on the podcast, and the JSOC scripts helped a lot in terms of just how the Switch 2 feels in my hands, and it was almost like holding a regular controller except for that analog stick, right? Like it just kept getting in the way, and so I didn't feel comfortable really playing Mario Wonder on that either, right? So it's just the only way I can comfortably play like the 5-star levels in Mario Wonder is to have like an external controller, which sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I have the D brand grip. Get my eyes so the camera will focus on this instead of my eyes. There we go. I have the D brand grip, and it's got a really great cutout for the audio listeners. I'm sorry, but it's got this really great cutout for your middle finger. Just sits right in there perfectly. It is incredibly comfortable to hold. This
How's
this
that for
is
a mouse?
awesome.
Like a mouse? How's that mouse feel on that?
I tested that this morning. This feels much better. Excuse me, than nothing, but still not great.
Right.
The thing is in mouse mode, I'm constantly hitting the stupid stick. And so like as I'm mousing around, I hit the stick. And the only way that I can not do that is to try as hard as I can to put my thumb like just underneath the Y button but like near the Y and the B button when I'm holding it. And even then I still end up hitting the stick. So then I ended up holding the whole thing. I wish I had my top-down camera set up for you guys. I ended up holding the whole thing kind of sideways as I was trying to mouse around. It's not comfortable. The mouse thing is cool, but you're going to need a real-ass mouse to really make it useful, I think.
Yeah. I love that they included the mouse mode in there, because there's people that like Cyberpunk has the functionality to use the mouse. Metroid Prime is going to have the capability of using the mouse. I love that idea so much because truthfully, the left analog stick, like using that is like more intuitive than WASD is for a lot of people. And I think it's just more comfortable. So having that and mouse is kind of like a killer combo. I'm still trying to find something. I think for me, the bigger part is the trigger just does not feel like a good click for a mouse.
It's too skinny.
Yeah, and I'm just like, how would you improve on this? It feels like you need like a whole other controller that is like more mouse driven, or just use a straight mouse. There's a lot of compromise that's happening there.
I think the best thing that Nintendo could do is actually just release a mouse. I remember that Microsoft had a mouse back in the day that was like completely flat, but then you could like bend it and it like made like the mouse shape. I think it was called the Arc mouse or something. Didn't look particularly like, I wouldn't want that as like my regular mouse, but as a portable mouse to take with me when I take my Switch 2 someplace.
It's gonna happen. I know it. They're gonna have Super Mario Paint, and they're gonna include a mouse in there because they had a mouse for the Mario Paint for the Super Nintendo.
And if it doesn't happen, Carrie will lick a Nintendo cartridge.
It'll come out alongside the Switch SP.
Yeah.
There you go. Ooh,
All right. Well, go ahead, Rich. What were you going to say?
I was commenting on the music, the classical
right.
music.
I thought Sonny Corleone was going to be walking up behind me in a second. All right. Well, it looks like that's just about all the time that we have for today's episode. Again, we did not get a chance to talk about Summer Games Fest. Maybe next week we'll talk about that. I will say that I found it to be extremely yawn-inducing. There just wasn't anything. I wouldn't say that there wasn't anything. The amount of things that I was really excited for were pretty low. Rich, was there anything at Summer Games Fest that you got real? Oh, okay,
I barely paid
lied.
attention to Summer Game Fest. Go ahead.
Okay,
what were you gonna say?
Well, I have already forgotten about the one thing that I was really excited for, and that was Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. Did you see that, Rich?
Yeah, that was shown first in, what was it? Not Summer Game Fest, right?
Xbox.
State of Play. Was there a State of Play?
Yeah, it was the State of Play. You're right.
Yeah. So no, I'm super excited. So it's a little bit bittersweet for Marvel versus Capcom fans. I mean, all the Marvel versus Capcom fans are super excited for Marvel Tokon. Don't get me wrong, but there's a bit of bitterness in terms of like, oh, we are not going to get a Marvel versus Capcom 4, and if we are, it's like 10 years out. So that conversation has been a lot of fun to listen to from different content creators, and I feel the same way. It's weird, right? It's weird that this is a thing. It's like, this was a big surprise for a State of Play, and I did not see it coming, but I'm happy that Arc System Works is getting this opportunity. They did killer with Dragon Ball Fighters, and they've been doing great the whole time. Like the Persona fighting games, Guilty Gear, obviously there was Blaze Blue Tag, so they've been at this for a while. So for them to get this opportunity, not just with Marvel but also with Sony entrusting them with the Marvel license, that I think it's Sony that did the hard work of getting the license, right? And so they're entrusting them with the actual development of it, and it looks phenomenal.
It really does. The art style is insane.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? When I went to IGN Live on Saturday in California, there was someone that remarked that they thought it was actually Capcom doing it. And I was like, no, that's Arc System. And they were like, really? And like, that's how it came across, that they really thought it was MVC4.
It comes across that way. And like the night of the announcement, Maximilian dude was streaming like for hours, right? And and he was reading the blog, and he commented on this too. But as soon as you read the blog, you see it. It says like, what does it say? It says, oh shoot, now I forgot. But they mentioned the legacy of the Marvel games without saying the games by name, and then they say, oh, that's what it is. They say something about taking you for a ride, which is like the iconic lyric in the Marvel versus Capcom 2 character select screen. I'm going to take you for a ride. So I'm like, everyone's like, what do they mean by that? Like, is this an homage? Are they trolling us? Like, what is going on right now? So it almost feels like they really are like honoring that legacy. They know that they have like a high responsibility with this, and they're trying their best not to like anger the fans of Marvel versus Capcom, but show them that, we deserve this opportunity.
Multiple times during that presentation, I was waiting for a Street Fighter character to just show up. I know at the very beginning it says Arc System Works and it does not say Capcom. And then they're showing this and I was like,
you're waiting for Ryu.
Remember that part when they showed the thing and then they paused and then they rewound?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
thought, okay, here comes Ryu. Ryu's going to do a freaking Hadouken right here, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Do you think that they'll get Do you think that they'll partner with Capcom to get those characters in there?
I don't
like as DLC later.
I don't think so, but I don't think that it's like anything relationship wise, right? Like I think Capcom would be willing to do it. I think Arc System Works would be willing to do it, and I think Sony would be willing to do it. I think it's just that like this feels like they're trying to keep it like really clean in terms of the presentation, in terms of like, this is Marvel. We're not going to bring in Arc System Works characters. We're probably not going to have funky cameos like Mortal Kombat always has these weird cameos. They're probably not going to do that. They want to keep it like Marvel and really like dedicate this to every bit of work that they do. They want to go into Marvel, I think.
Russ, what do you think about this game? Did you check it out or did you miss this one?
I saw it. I'm most interested in that fight stick that they are coming out with, Project Defiant or whatever. So it's like, it looks like a PS5. It's kind of neat looking, white and black. And it's going to use that PS Link connection instead of Bluetooth. And so it might be like super low latency. I don't know. Like, I don't really own a fight stick other than like the, 8BitDo arcade stick and stuff. And so this kind of, I should probably get into this whole world, but I feel like, if a first party is making it, like I'm being well taken care of, like this might be a good entry point, So I'm actually more interested in the hardware than the game itself. But
I think that would be a great video for you to do, right? Like the review of this. I know that you're saying you should probably get into that world, but like clearly when you do something that's new, you do get into that world, right? Like you take dozens of hours to research what's already there. And I think this is going to be an interesting rabbit hole to see you go down, and I'm happy to help Sherpa as best I can, because it's interesting. There are a lot of fight sticks out there. And one of the difficulties sometimes is that even though PS5 is one of the premier consoles, is a lot of the fight sticks, if you want a PS5 controller, that is to say not a PS4 controller that works on a PS5, if you want a PS5 controller, it's going to cost a lot of money. So that's another reason that this is going to be interesting, is because this is a PS5 controller, and like you said, it uses that link, so not just wired but wireless.
Would you recommend, are you interested in that controller, Rich, or would you be like, I want to be leverless?
Yeah, I've been enjoying my leverless. I don't think I'd go back to arcade, like a traditional fight stick. For me at this point, it's between, am I going to stick to just a control pad, regular control pad, or will I do leverless, right? There's been enough conversation now that a fight, like a traditional arcade stick, seems like it doesn't make sense anymore. Especially with these games that have more than 6 inputs. There are a lot of fighting games now that have more than 6 inputs. So
at IGN Live, they actually had a leverless there. There was a fighting game section that was there, and I tried it out, and it was at first blush, but I was going through it and just trying to go through the motions of stuff.
Yeah.
And doing rolling down forward stuff is easy enough.
Yes.
But going forward down a diagonal is not very intuitive. It kind of breaks my brain a little bit. I have to really focus in on my left hand, and my right hand just freezes up. I don't press anything. I'm just and it's
running out of RAM.
Yeah, I'm. It's for sure that I don't know. It's like gyro for me. I don't think that leverless is inherently better. I can see it being better in a number of ways, but I don't necessarily agree that it's better, especially for other like Zangief's spinning pile driver.
Right.
You have to do you have to do a 360. That is intuitive on a traditional arcade stick, and the button flow, because back and right are this and down and up, or it's just how you would press that. I don't think you press all 4, do you? Would you press all 4? Maybe you could.
To do what?
A full
to do
rotation.
a 360. So the secret is that for a 360, you don't actually have to do a 360, right? So it's like you have to do a 270, depending on the game. So
right.
Old school Street Fighter, you do have to do a 360, but I think for modern games, it's closer to a 270 or something like that. So it's you might end at up and right or something like that. I haven't done it in a leverless. I've seen there are a lot of videos that show, because again, it goes back to muscle memory, like you're saying.
Right.
There are a lot of videos that show how to do a 360 on leverless, and they'll show you you don't have to go through every single combination.
Right. I mean, there's even in Tekken 3, I haven't played in a while, but even King's Rolling Death Cradle, how you would hold the buttons and roll over the actual fight buttons, not the controller part. Yeah. That was a lot easier for me as well. I don't know. It just feels, I don't know. Perhaps it's just my oldness that is breaking me. I tried it out and I was I'm just going to stick with the traditional.
So you never played fighters on WASD on a keyboard?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, back in the old days, yes, because I had,
that's what I mean.
I had Street Fighter on DOS.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was man, I really need a controller. And then I'd get a Gravis pad, and that sucked worse.
Yeah.
And I was man, can no one make a good controller for PC? Because this is terrible.
So when I first got married, actually before we got married, we were living in an apartment, and there were no good controllers for PC.
None.
But Xbox, the 360 controller was very good. And what I bought one, and then I went to my friend who knew how to solder, and we cut off the cord, and then he soldered on a USB, and you plugged it into your computer, and it just freaking worked. It was awesome. I freaking loved it.
Yeah. Good times. That's
All
awesome.
right. Before we wrap up, I have one more call that came in. This one's from Anonymous, and it is about Elden Ring Nightrein. Listen.
Hi, sorry if this is a little loud. I'm just like at a cafe right now. But I did have a quick question. So based off what you guys saw with Nightrein, do you think this like new co-op roguelike direction is something that's gonna be popular with like existing longtime Soul fans, or this is more so for like getting in new players like yourself? Also, would it be possible for you guys to add this link to the YouTube bio? Because I had a really hard time finding this. Thank you so much.
All right. So, yes, I have already now done that. So people, like all shows going forward, will have the link to the voice cast on there. But Nightrein, very different than Elden Ring. Basically, she's wondering, is this going to appeal to Elden Ring players, or is it only going to appeal to people like me who don't really, I mean, like Elden Ring's a good game, but this is way more appealing to me. What do you think about that, Rich?
Yeah, I think multiplayer is so tricky in terms of that. Like, in terms of like, will other, not just from software, but will other people adopt this, right? So like a lot of this conversation was born from a couple weeks ago now, where we talked about the concurrent players on Steam for Nightrein and how high that was, unexpectedly, at least for me, high. And I'm looking now, it's still very high, 121,925 right this moment.
Yeah.
So incredibly high. And I think that what I suspect, if I had to bet, what I suspect will happen is that From Software will certainly make more of these, and almost nobody else will, right? Like, it's going to be like the team Hazelight with Split Fiction and It Takes Two and stuff like that, where like they're doing it really well and they are selling a ton of copies, and other companies are just too scared to try. Like, I don't think I can do that, right? So like they've carved their own niche, and that's kind of like, that's where I think this would happen. I think it's doing so well that they have to try this again down the line. But I can't imagine that other companies are like willing to bet it all. They're just going to make their own Souls likes.
Yeah. I almost wish that, like you listed off the people who are playing, 121,000 people, or 122,000 roughly people are playing right now as we record this. I would love it if steamdb.info, I always mess up that URL. I would love it if they would make it so that you could see what games people who are playing that game have in common.
That would be sick.
So it'd be like, okay, everybody who's playing this game, they all have this other game. I would love to see that. That would be a very cool feature. Russ, have you tried Nightrein? Are you interested in that game at all?
I haven't. I think that in answer to the question, I think that it 100% is more geared towards current and existing Elden Ring players. Like, it feels like to me, I don't want to get into Nightrein because I got to learn how to play Elden Ring first. If there's people relying on me to play like these nightly raids and bosses and stuff, I got to get good first. So where am I going to get good? I'm going to get good playing Elden Ring. And so I feel like this is more for existing players than it is for newcomers, because it's an additional layer. Like, you have to be good at Elden Ring and now find two other people to play with, right? And so for me, that's just a layer of complication to it that is a larger barrier to entry for me. I think that Rich is right in that I think it just has to be attached to a very popular product already. And I think that From Software is just the place to be. It's like, okay, like, we're going to try different avenues of our game, but it's still our game, you know, and that all makes sense. We might see some, you know, sort of multiplayer roguelike in the future, but I just feel like this is going to be the reigning champion, Nightrein champion.
Nice.
Well done.
Carrie, do you think we're going to see more of these, or is this going to be some like this genre, which is basically a battle royale, but with multiplayer and no player enemies? Do you think we're going to see more things like that, or do you think that's just going to be a FromSoft kind of thing?
Yeah, so I agree with everyone else, but I would offer an olive branch insofar as I think that there's a lot of companies that have created obviously they've created a lot of things that were the same formula that FromSoft has to varying degrees of success. To go even further, I do think that there is a requirement for at least the name to like help carry it over the finish line, because first off, multiplayer games, unless you're going to make it free to play, you're going to have a hard time just getting up the player base to actually succeed in the multiplayer portion of it. That being said, I think that Elden Ring going, let's make a multiplayer version game. And they say, well, let's implement some Fortnite-like elements. You do have the roguelike stuff where going through and collecting items, like, trying to build up your arsenal and actually getting good enough while having this, fog close in. Like, there's a forward momentum that is pushing you forward. You really can't collect your thoughts. You have to make conscious decisions. It's always this pressing forward momentum. Where that type of element comes in, where the very Fortnite-esque type of addition onto it, there's probably some other games where that makes sense, and then you can leverage those IPs that are already big. So it's probably something like that I could see. But for a very Dark Souls plus Fortnite type of thing, it's likely to only be successful for FromSoft. I don't know how much success they would have to be a free to play game. If it was like a free to play game made by like NCSoft or whatever, and it was like mobile, and with that probably has like a larger degree of like catching fire. But if they try to do it how like Elden Ring did, no, I don't think that they would enter into it.
Fair enough. Well, if you guys want to send in messages to our VoiceCast line, once again, that URL is voicecast.app/NerdNest. These guys all put out videos recently. Rich, tell everybody where they can find a video about or what kind of videos they can find over at youtube.com/fanthedeck.
Yeah. So what's next? The next one I'm doing is, I think I mentioned it on Wednesday, is I saw an article about just not caring about the Steam Deck 2, which is like a sensational title, but I thought it was a good piece that I reacted to effectively. So I talk about that. And I'm also recording a video about the $499 leak about the Xbox Ally that we talked about today. And really that's more about like, what kind of sources can you trust, and how kind of breaking that down, the reliability of different sources and stuff like that. So that's what I'm talking about this week.
Very cool. I have a video coming out sometime this week about upgrades to your gaming setup, because we all buy, we all upgrade our graphics card, we all upgrade our RAM, but then we have these things that we buy that just sit there and don't get changed out. And that's the video that I'm making later on this week. It's just, these are the upgrades that I've decided, okay, it's been way too long since I've replaced this thing. So what do I have? What do I get now? Carrie, what videos are you working on that you can tell us about?
So the one that is going to be has to get done this week is it is the old version. So Lenovo sent me their original Lenovo Legion Go S. There is some interesting things that I do want to talk about. I don't think it's going to do very well at all, but there is a large performance problem if you just use the OEM drivers, and we can clean it up a fair bit. But overall, at the $730 price, anyway, I'll get into it. So that video is going to be coming this week. And then the other video that I'm going to be talking about will be directly comparing the Steam Deck versus the Switch 2 in both realities, where, Steam Deck running at its full power versus the Steam Deck running in the same power scope that the Switch 2 does.
Very cool. I'm very interested to find out how the battery life shakes out on that for the Switch 2 versus the Steam Deck. Mm-hmm. Russ, what do you got coming up over at youtube.com/RetroGamecore?
I'm in a lull right now. I've got like 5 things I could work on, and I'm not sure which one it's going to be. I've got, I have the Legion Go S Z1E version running SteamOS. So I am really loving that thing. I was like,
Very nice.
I've been thinking about how I'm going to talk about it. I just installed a bunch of games, just been playing on it, and I've been thinking about how I'm going to talk about it. I'm like, man, like I could play this over every other handheld PC that I have. I'm like, man, maybe this is an easier recommendation than even the Steam Deck. Yeah. And then I just looked at the price while we were talking, and it's $830. I'm like, okay. That changes the conversation. So, I'm going to work on that. I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week because I want to really spend some time with it. But then I've got, I've been working on GameCube on the Switch too. There's some actually really good things they did with that that actually make it work, even though the controls are not suited for the Switch 2, So we'll talk about that in my video. But yeah,
Did you get the controller?
I don't know what I'm working on. Yeah, I got the controller, so that'll be part of the video as well. Yeah, I got a lot of things I want to test. I'm still debating whether or not I show emulation of other handhelds at the same time. Like if that's going to cross a line with a Nintendo, I have no idea. So I don't know. Playing it by ear.
There you go. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. You guys just spent 2 hours hanging out with us, and I appreciate it. So without any further ado, stay rad, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.